Hello and welcome to NIAGA Spotlight with me, Tamina Kausji. NIAGA Spotlight goes through the week in business and future affairs. Market watch, industries, analysis and insights. We've got you covered right here on NIAGA Spotlight. Now, this week on analysis, just ahead of Budget 2025, tabling later today, we're covering a successfully executed Budget 2024 socio-economic project. The focus today is on economic empowerment for women in public housing schemes, or Project Perumahan Rakyat (PPR) via food and beverage social enterprise partnerships. Now, just as a quick introduction, the Ministry of Finance Malaysia, through Yayasan Hasanah in partnership with the Federal Territories Department, JWP, Kuala Lumpur City Hall, DBKL, and Pepper Lab Social Enterprise, has been spearheading the transformation of 5 underutilized facilities within PPR, transforming them into community cloud kitchens supported by digital and technology infrastructures. Now, these are currently located at PPR Wangsasari, PPR Intan Baiduri, PPR Kampung Limau, PPR Kerinci, and PA Setapak Jaya 1A. These kitchens center B40 women entrepreneurs and MSMEs, especially those run by single mothers and youth. This enables them to earn while also caring for their families in a manner which is sustainable and scalable via the digital economy. Yang Berhormat Dr Zaliha Mustafa, Minister in the Prime Minister's Department for Federal Territories, launched the Dapo Digital or Cloud Kitchen earlier this week at PPR Wangsasari. Yang Berhormat Dr Zaliha Mustafa shared her insights around this project. Let's watch.
Thank you very much. I think this Cloud Kitchen program is a very good program. I thank Pepper Labs and Yayasan Hasanah, of course with the collaborations of JWP, Jabatan Wilayah DBKL and UNITA. I think it holds an immense potential for promoting economic empowerment and sustainable living, particularly for the women and their families. And by this initiative, it can help, of course, alleviate the poverty, encourage sustainable practices, as well as foster independence among the marginalized groups. And by offering a flexible platform for entrepreneurship, the program can help overcome economic barriers and create meaningful income streams involving families in the process. Not only fosters economic stability, but also strengthens familial ties and local community networks. And ultimately, the program can serve as a catalyst for lasting change, providing women and their families with the tools they need for a more empowered and a sustainable future. Therefore, I believe that by empowering women through technology and entrepreneurship opportunities, providing economic benefits for families as well as foster sustainable practices, this one-of-a-kind Cloud Kitchen program will have a profound, long-lasting impact on the society, thus economically empower the urban PPR communities.
Welcome back. We now have a live panel discussion at AWANI Studio 1 with Yayasan Hasanah and Pepper Labs to highlight how digital innovation and active entrepreneurship in the digital economy can be encouraged with technology via public, private and philanthropy partnership. I have the absolute pleasure of joining me in the studios today, Siti Kamaria Ahmad Subki, who is Trustee and Managing Director with Yayasan Hasanah, together with IR Kuhanpati, Founder with Pepper Labs. Thank you so much for making time to join us. Good morning. How are you both doing today?
Good, thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
Fantastic. All right. If I could start with you, Siti, and Yayasan Hasanah's perspectives, I would like to go off with tax incentives for social procurement. In Yayasan Hasanah's view, how does the role of fiscal policies such as tax incentives actually aid in growing the public-private philanthropic partnerships for socio-economic initiatives? And I must also say congratulations on the fruition of this one project right in time to show that Budget 2024 is already delivering fruits.
Thank you for that. That's a very good question to open our conversation today. And as you had rightly pointed out, Yayasan Hasanah as a champion for public-private philanthropic partnership actively promotes collaborative solutions and with partners such as Pepper Labs. And this works by bringing together businesses, government agencies such as DBKL and Kementerian Wilayah to encourage cross advocates, for socioeconomic challenges. And what's important incentive as one that you measured is with regards to social procurement, and this is a game changer because it includes considerations such as social, environmental considerations into procurement. And this is something that would benefit marginalized communities such as the ones in PPR that we saw being shared earlier, and it also promotes local development and supporting social entrepreneurs on the ground. To us, it's something that is important because it ensures private resources are directed and allocated to where it's needed the most, the communities, the marginalized communities, and it's something that is already in your hands, which is your dollar spend, your spending power, and that is very powerful to helping your neighbors, your community, and it's something as easy as ordering your dinner.
Correct, exactly. So speaking about the fact, Siti, that we often have shared risk and resources when it comes to such PPP partnerships, would you say there was a certain shift due to all the hardships that a lot of us, particularly those from less privileged and backgrounds that had less access because of the pandemic lockdowns and closures, and this actually perhaps influenced how even Budget 2024 was allocated towards what Yayasan Hasanah then dispersed?
That's a very good question because what you're encapsulating is really a new vision for philanthropy. It's very important for us to achieve sustainable impact over a long period of time. We have to advocate for multi-year financing. And that is something that is very embedded with Yayasan Hasanah, with the way we are funded through an endowment that's set up by Khazanah Nasional in 2015.
That's right.
And this shows a shift from short-term philanthropic interventions, which are very one-off in nature, to lasting catalytic positive change. Which means that Yayasan Hasanah, through the intervention of Khazanah Nasional and the government of Malaysia, we're able to be in it for the long run, to see something true from start to the end. And we're seeing communities such as PPR Wangsasari and also Lembah Subang, in which we've been in there since 2015, and it's showing impact, it's showing results with regards to long-term success. One of it is fostering community leadership and creating leaders such as Kuhan, through Pepper Labs and more that operates in marginalized communities over the long run.
Exactly. Thank you so much for just emphasizing how the ecosystem is working, especially on the government-related side. And now I think that flows perfectly into Kuhan, me asking you a little bit more about looking at the Dapo Digital Initiative. So this really helps to showcase the collaborative approach for such PPPs. Perhaps if you could start us off by sharing a little bit about the micro-credentials for how that came about for the cloud kitchen technology and how it aims to benefit all the participants, since it's spread across actually 5 PPRs for now.
All right, thank you, Demina, for having us as well. So I think I also echo upon Siti very well that when we first started this program, there is one main objective here, which is all of us agree upon it, which is eradicating hardcore poverty, at the same time eradicating poverty. And as Malaysia gears towards our 13th Malaysia plan, the initial statistics as it shows, we are at about 6%, which we have dropped from 8% to 6% from 2019 to 2022. Now, when we talk about poverty, poverty is multidimensional. We don't only talk about poverty in terms of income generation, but to a certain extent even about healthcare and also education. Now, based on our baseline study of the women that have been identified to be part of Dapo Digital program, almost 75% of our women are actually secondary educated. And I think there's a lot of emphasis recently, even in the SDG conference just held about a month ago, about how do you actually provide some sort of a formal education to these women and also men out there who have actually highest level about secondary school. So this is when we thought that, why don't we work with a university and come up with a micro-credential program. Now, micro-credential is, of course, a very structured approach, but most of them would go to a higher institution to learn. Now, over here, what we're trying to do is that we're trying to bring as much as focus or attention and try to localize this learning within the PPR. So that's how we worked with UNITA, and we said, why don't we come up with a concept called University at PPR? And that's how the micro-credential program started. And we're also glad that Hasanah, Yayasan Hasanah actually motivated us and also supported us to develop Malaysia's first cloud kitchen management micro-credential. So it actually is it's a combination of not just hard skills of culinary skills, which you can actually get it a lot from TVET these days, we speak a lot about it, but apart from that, narrowing the digital divide, because Malaysia is also aspiring to be a high-income nation by 2028. But how do we do that if everyone is still away and apart from the digitalization? So these are types of elements and modules that have been incorporated in this micro-credential.
Fantastic. So of course the challenge is also about not only scaling, that comes a little bit later, but perhaps first about how does perhaps Pepper Labs and Yayasan Hasanah select the participants to be in this uni at PPR, for example, and how many are in this initial fledgling cohort?
All right. So at this point of time, there are about 50 micro-entrepreneurs.
Right.
Now this is considered, so with our partnership with Yayasan Hasanah, this is considered the third phase of a Dapur digital program. The first phase was about introduction of culinary skills and then you running your business out of home. And I think recently Khazanah Research Institute as well has, in their state of households, has actually reported that food away from home has actually increased. That means spending food away from home has increased by about 51%. So we're looking at communities, especially urban poor households, spending a lot of money for food away from home. Now this is a market that we can capitalize, but the next question is how do you bring that closer to the community? So that's how we identified those beneficiaries that are going to operate the kitchen, and because these kitchens are institutionalized within these PPR complexes, we need these women to be staying there, to be living there, and to also know the appetite that people in the PPR complex would prefer. So that was the first step that we have identified our beneficiaries. Now the second step here is the government's focus, which is eradicating poverty. And poverty here is defined by at least B40. I wouldn't want to go to the hardcore poverty, which is about less than 1,000 ringgit income per household. But we are talking about hardcore poverty, which is about 2,000 or 4,000 entire household income. So those are some of the qualifiers that we have identified. And with our partners, why partnering with Hasanah actually helps us is because they bring a huge amount of experience in terms of community-based entrepreneurship. And I think a lot of us today are speaking about community-based approach. So we also look at the synergy within these women, because these kitchens are actually not operated by individuals. They're actually operated by a community, and this community has to be cohesive enough to work towards a common goal. And these are some of the criteria, but to be honest, there are about 96 questions that Pepper Labs have actually determined in order to even qualify a person into this program.
Fantastic. So there's clearly a good screening program in process. At the same time, how would you say some of the more common challenges that are associated with launching such cohorts, and how have they been overcome?
All right. I think at this point of time, talking about the social entrepreneurship space is very important. There are about 10 million social enterprises globally, and we contribute about 2 trillion annually in terms of revenue, and that actually generates about 200 million jobs globally as well. And in terms of the national GDP or global GDP, we range between 2 to 7%, and this is all reported in the World Economic Forum. Yet, we are an industry, or we're in a sector or an ecosystem which is equivalent to the size of the garments industry or double the size of an advertising industry. But when we come, one of the greatest challenges we face is social enterprise a key ally to corporate sectors and governments because of that perception? And social enterprises today, one of the greatest challenges we see is we continue to be perceived as those who can help you with community social responsibility, and that's a once-off relationship. And that's not what we wanted. What we want is a long-term relationship to maybe for corporates to actually achieve your ESGs, and for governments to achieve maybe your national plans like the 12 Malaysian plan, or even any other key parameters that have been outlined. So that is one of the key challenges, getting the buy-ins. But today, as we see, this project brought in partners like Hasanah, Jabatan Wilayah Persekutuan and also Ministry of Finance. And we also continue to institutionalize such partnerships for structural changes.
Fantastic. What I'm really hearing from both Kuhan as well as City is that the challenges that have come up along the path are pre-existing, but at the same time we are being a lot more innovative these days. And shifting back to Yayasan Hasanah, City, I would love your insights since you happen to be able to capture a much broader landscape. Now, looking at the digital success of Dapur Digital, what are Yayasan Hasanah's other ongoing programs that also look at similarly overcoming socioeconomic gaps, but across more diverse communities in Malaysia?
Yayasan Hasanah since 2015 has been advocating for community-based approach, and this is something that we take pride on, whereby our approach in a community goes nationwide, and we start with making sure that we build trust within the community, and that's our entry point. And so to give an example, in PPR, Lembah Subang, recently there was post on social media that went viral, whereby they were able to decorate their lobby to look like a hotel lobby, but it was actually just in front of a lift. And this is one of our projects by Think City. And very interesting with that, because that showcase whereby in a community whereby strong leadership and social cohesion has been built over a decade, then they are able to self-organize and fundraise and showcase their ability to bring improvements to their life. So that's one example. Another example, recently during a program that we had with Pepper Labs, I still remember Puan Mariam sharing how proud they are with the Dapur Digital at PPR that Pepper Labs operate, where they actually recycle their oil. And this is a very important point, because recycling is something that we always perceive that is not synonymous with communities such as in PPRs or public housing nationwide. But by this knowledge of recycling oil, they've set up the center, the cloud kitchen, to be a center for collecting all the oils in the PPR and the community. And they did this by themselves, and they're very proud about it. And these are some of the very real stories of Kak Mariam, Kak Shima, whom showcase to the people out there with a little amount of funding by Ministry of Finance from Yayasan Hasanah. They are able to take it forward 100 times and uplift not only their livelihood, but their social understanding and also environmental stewardship in their community. And this is essentially the community-based approach that Yayasan Hasanah had been championing for the last decade. And this is not just in urban areas. We also have projects throughout the country in Sabah, Sarawak, in different states that showcase many, many other stories like this. Very inspiring on the ground, very real human stories.
Thank you so much for sharing a couple of those actual grassroots insights, because what it's actually showing is that social enterprises are more and more actually building up a strong track record of being effective partners with the government for actually disbursing and also conducting programs that have vast effect on not just public policy but sustainability. I would like to ask, out of curiosity as well, Siti, are there any data-driven impact measurements that Yayasan Hasanah already has in place or hopes to put into place, especially considering just how valuable data touchpoints can be to further actually increase and ensure delivery?
Yeah. Being an impact-based foundation, Yayasan Hasanah has been championing data-driven analysis and also something that can contribute to its policy. We also have Khazanah Research Institute that we support, and the State of the Household report that Kuhan mentioned just now is one of our reports that try to measure and report quite a lot of our interventions and bring it forward as a policy recommendation. And this is something that's very important as we link and we connect this to the budget cycle nationally. But what's very important that I want to emphasize is that as much as we talk about B40 and all the different banding of income, but what's very important and more important than the bands is actually whether or not you're able to move from one band to another. And that's incremental change. And that is something that we try to measure. And Kuhan had been collecting data on this, which is something that we make sure that happens from the baseline stage. And so we record, for example, how much are the households of each of the women earning. And at the end of every quarter and at the end of the program, we have a certain target. For example, each household at the end of the program are earning, say, 5,000 ringgit a month. And in the process, we also teach them financial literacy, how to keep a logbook, how to make sure that whatever sales they're making, it is contributing to the working capital, to the cash flow, to savings for the future for the children. And also making sure that they teach the community, the other women outside the program, and inspire them to manage their funds well. So that's one area of it. And how we take this forward, by showing incremental change in their income, it's very fact-driven that this community in this PPR is moving, say, from miskin tegar to B40, B40 to M40, and middle income, and so on and so forth. So the women also, after a certain period of time of intervention, men and women for that matter, they know already that they've, for example, achieved middle income, and you see a dream spark in themselves. Then they'll start having dreams such as, I want to save up money to buy a landed property. I want to save up money to set up shop, open up a restaurant. And we're seeing all these multiple stories on the ground showing a human, very human story who has reached a certain level of self-actualization, optimization. They want to move out of poverty themselves.
Fantastic.
It's not something that you force.
Thanks very much for that, Siti, because what I'm really hearing is that it's not just about earning an income, but it's actually about kickstarting generational, social and financial mobility within the classes. Thanks very much for the conversation so far. We do take a short break now. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back with NIAGA Spotlight and this timely discussion ahead of Belanjawan 2025. See you.
Setinggi mana siling dan lantai ekonomi negara telah dinaikkan? Sejauh mana kualiti dan taraf hidup rakyat telah ditingkatkan? Bagaimana pendekatan seluruh negara jadi kekuatan merealisasikan visi ekonomi madani? Ikuti pembentangan dan kupasan komprehensif Belanjawan 2025 pada 18 Oktober ini hanya di saluran 501 dan di semua platform digital Astro AWANI.
Welcome back to NIAGA Spotlight, still with me, Tamina Kausji. And today, of course, in our budget special, we are looking at economic empowerment via social enterprise partnerships with Yayasan Hasanah and Pepper Labs live in the studios with us here. So continuing on the conversation, if I may refer to Kuhan, now looking at leveraging tax incentives for impacts. So of course, as we are all awaiting the budget 2025 tabling a little bit later on today, how do you potentially see tax incentives for corporations investing in social enterprises, hopefully changing the landscape even further and sort of jump-starting us into the next stage that we need to be at? We've gone past awareness into action. Now it's really about ensuring that there's sufficient coverage for everyone. So how do we get more corporates into this game?
Thank you. So if we look back in 2018, so this is not something new actually. MOF has actually approved a tax exemption for corporations that are matching funds that have been raised by social enterprises in 2018 through the social impact matching grant under MAGIC those days, which now have been merged into Meranti. But after that, in the last 2 years, at least budget 2022, 2023 and 2024, we have seen that they have consistently given tax exemption for the revenue that has been generated by social enterprises. And a quick check, in 2022, all social enterprises, there are about 400 over registered social enterprises, cumulatively generating about 100 million ringgit and actually offering jobs over 4,000 jobs. Now that is actually a socio-economic problems that they have solved, because most of this revenue that has been generated has been given back to the marginalized and also the underserved. Now, Of course, when we talk about providing tax exemption for contributions, I know the government through Budget 2025 and so have always said that we need to protect our base in the sense that, you know, we need to increase the tax income and also have more diversity in terms of tax income. And over here, social enterprises, in contrary, is asking, can you actually provide a tax exemption for corporations? Now, why is there a reasoning behind it is because we are still a thriving social enterprise industry. If we talk about in France, for instance, social enterprises or social and solidarity economy actually contributes almost 10% of the GDP. But over here, we are still thriving, we are still growing, and the government also has a set of problems, and that's why they have been promoting public, private and philanthropy partnerships, and earlier this 2 months ago, public and private partnerships, and even in Budget 2025, one of the key focus is public and private partnerships. But now, who is going to be the driver to actually execute these plans? And to execute these plans, if the private sector is going to choose an intermediary or a key ally, that could be social enterprises. Now, if we introduce a tax exemption and says that, you know, let's actually promote more social enterprises to be adopted into a supply chain, that actually spurs the economy. And when we talk about economy here, we are not talking about an capital economy, capitalism-driven economy. Mm-hmm. We're talking about an inclusive capitalism economy. So that actually is you know, one stone with two birds kind of concept. So even though you are providing a tax exemption to these corporations and reducing your revenue, but at the same time, you're improving the socio-economic status of the people of the nation. So we feel that tax incentives for social enterprises in terms of contributions and also investments in social enterprises can actually spur the economy much more better.
And perhaps also just putting it out there, there may also be opportunity to explore investment tax credits for social enterprises so that actually further spurs the involvement of the corporations who are really able to target very specific issues that we're dealing with.
Exactly.
Climate crisis is the first thing that comes to mind, and the way in which, yes, we are all quite equally affected when it comes to the immense flash floods that we're seeing increasingly, especially during monsoon season, but particularly B40 households and those from underserved communities. So a lot to chew there. Thanks very much for that, Kuhan. Siti, moving back to Yayasan Hasanah and looking at supporting ESG goals through social enterprises. I'd love to dig a little bit deeper into this. You had lightly touched upon it by sharing those very inspiring stories a little earlier about communities that are involved already in recycling, but at the same time, casting the net further, since Yayasan Hasanah has that scope and scale. Let's look at it within the means of Malaysia preparing for ASEAN 2025 and the fact that with all eyes on Malaysia, we're also looking at reducing emissions, we're looking at meeting our climate and planetary goals and Scope 3 emissions and such like, which insofar there is quite a perspective towards this being just greenwashing. How can we help make it translated into reality?
Thank you. Hasanah is a foundation that promotes Malaysia's global sustainability through our solutions that empower communities, and we also make sure that we encourage social inclusivity and improve the environment. And we do this through partnerships with organizations, impact partners that operate in spaces in environment, community development, arts and public spaces, and this is something that we've done since 2015. And our work impacts multiple fronts of society. And in the context of environment, for example, you touched a little bit about carbon and also how sustainability is linked to that. I'm proud to say that community places a huge role with regards to everything that we want to achieve with regards to environmental, social, economic sustainability. Why? Because communities are what we call, in terms of diplomacy and humanitarian action, as first responders. And first responders are the ones who are first affected in the case of pandemic and crisis, and climate change and climate crisis. And we're proud to say that in our road to COP29 in Azerbaijan, that Hasanah and Khazanah is showcasing how community-based approach is able to solve some of our environmental crises with regards to environmental stewardship and tiger conservation, which is an area that's very important and in which how communities are able to organize orang asli trained to be as rangers, and so on and so forth. And this is actually very unique to our Malaysian community, and how we come up with our own solutions to something that is a global problem, but we do this very organically through what we call nature-based solutions. So these are some of the big ideas that Hasanah tried to promote through our work and making it mainstream. Another aspect that we want to encourage is making sure that communities along the Central Forest Spine and the peninsula are able to be empowered and become resilient through the different interventions that we do along the Central Forest Spine, making sure that they're economically resilient, providing opportunities, and also building capacity for them to face the challenges. And all this forms not only a very good showcase with regards to COP29 in Azerbaijan and beyond, for example, but in the context of Asian chairmanship, there's a lot of stories that could be shared with regards to how Malaysia is able to come up with its very own solutions to its problems. And this is very important, because this is what I also define our rights for self-determination. It's what freedoms and what merdeka mean. Yeah. And to be able to showcase this, and Hasanah is proud to be the convener, catalyst, collaborator, bringing people together through this big whole-of-nation approach, whereby we crowd in for our tiger conservation work. We have 11 different partners, and we also utilize our GDRN framework. These are GLICs that are coming together, not only in terms of funding, they're bringing together their expertise, their level of reach with regards to the different businesses, and also, like for example, CIMB has banks in different locations, and all this become our arms and legs in bringing solutions to the different communities timely. Say flood in Kedah, so that through our GDRA and Bantu, we come together and help the communities to survive and thrive during crisis. And all these are important showcase, because in the context of ASEAN, this then brings together some of our common challenges. For example, flood. It's not something that only Malaysia faces. It's also something that's very common to our neighboring countries.
But at the same time, I love the fact that you emphasize how important hyper-localized solutions actually have been, because that not only speaks of whether or not they will be successful, but whether or not we can then look at replicating them. Thank you very much, Siti. Kuhan, moving back to you, and on a similar vein, but moving into the aspect of social procurement as a growth strategy. Now, what opportunity lies ahead for Malaysia with ASEAN coming up for us to actually ensure that social enterprises are better integrated into procurement processes, and expanding a little on what you touched upon, which is that once you are part of a supply chain, rather than being within an ecosystem that is thriving for now, but it might be limited if you're looking, let's say, beyond 18 months, beyond 5 years, if you even last for 5 years. Yeah.
Thank you. And I think I'm just going to, build upon Siti as well. Before I deep dive on that question, is that we're talking about a central spine in Malaysia where there's a lot of conservation work has been done, and we also have actually established local economies. Now, if we look at social enterprises in Malaysia, they are actually primarily in 3 main sectors: the services, the agriculture, and of course the F&B, and also the hospitality and tourism industry. So you just imagine you're actually welcoming all the ASEAN countries, which is the 5th largest economy in the world, going towards the 4th largest economy. You're welcoming them to Malaysia, and you're actually giving them, apart from the serious conversations around recalibrating economy and also about bolstering regional value chain, you actually get to bring them to experience the true Malaysian hospitality, and hosted by inclusive businesses or social enterprises. Now, this is a means of social procurement as well, because we are looking in Indonesia itself. They have actually spent almost $500 million to host ASEAN. Now, a portion of this, if it's committed, and a percentage or even a value is committed towards social enterprises, or in ASEAN context they call it as inclusive business. And on a side note, Pepper Labs won the Inclusive Business Award in ASEAN 2021. So if that could be allocated for social procurement, that is a great push towards revenue, or the needle that will require to transform social enterprises. So ASEAN is, of course, going to be a huge market that we can capitalize upon. And it's very consistent with what ASEAN 2025's theme is, which is about recalibrating economies. And we can start with our own inclusive economy approach by even, having site programs or site visits to where Hasanah or even Pepper Labs have. Just imagine, you have ASEAN delegates visiting one of the 5 Dapur Digital. Such a beautiful experience, very grassroots driven, so that people can actually know how social innovations are actually changing social mobility, social partnerships, and also how people are thriving with such technologies.
Absolutely. What I'm really hearing that there is an opportunity for is perhaps moving towards establishing a social procurement framework, because as we quite often experience, having of course previously been the chair for ASEAN, what happens during ASEAN year quite often truncates the moment in which we hand it over to the next neighbor country, right? So I think it's all about building capacity during 2025, but at the same time ensuring it goes on till 2035, when our turn comes once again to take on the chair. Fantastic. Siti, if I could move into Yayasan Hasanah's thoughts on actually expanding on how you can ensure that there are long-term collaborations with social enterprises. Not so much a hand-holding as there perhaps needs to be within the initial stages, but oversight to ensure that they are able to sustain beyond their sphere, and also perhaps in a sense be the business trainer for other future businesses.
Thank you, and I love that question, and I want to build upon Kohan's really important point with regards to showcase, for example, for Asian Chairmanship.
Sure.
I'm really impressed with the quality of the products that are being made nationwide with regards to social entrepreneurship and social procurement that was mentioned. Really, when you travel from north to south, Sabah, Sarawak, so for example, partners like Dumo Wangi that we support, and look at, and I'm carrying today something from Earth Air, which is really beautiful. Imagine something like this that's weaved so beautifully, made by our Orang Asli community. It's in the, for example, the delegates pack.
That's right.
And this is a beautiful showcase on how tenacious and very, very skilled our artisans are in the country. And what this does, not just in the context of ASEAN Chairmanship, is that we are then able to create sustainable demand over the long term. Because it is, after all, market. It is about supply and demand. It is about creating sustainable markets out there beyond social procurement, beyond tax incentives. People really love what you make. And that is the real impact that you're creating for them. And I do believe in the strength of our social entrepreneurs throughout Malaysia. Some of their products, Earth Air, for example, have been selling in New York and capital cities around the world, showing that our products, even if it's made in a kampong, can really go global. And that's real demand, and that's what is going to help them to go to the next level, sustain themselves beyond the duration of external support.
Exactly.
And that is something we can do together by just promoting them through all the different international events that we have in the country. And not only that, like Kohan said, we can showcase them, bring them to see some of these sites. The Dapur Digital that is showing good results already, but that's one example. Really, throughout the country, there are multiple Sabah, Sarawak, East Coast, Kelantan, Terengganu, Selangor even.
Exactly.
These are what we call the orange economy, and real demand is what going to take it to the next level from Malaysia to the world.
Fantastic. Thank you very much for those insights, Siti. And now we've got just a little bit of time left. I'd like to ask for a quick last thought from each of you. Kuhan first, and then Siti for Yayasan Hasanah. Budget wish list. What's at the top of your mind?
All right. So, I have a long wish list actually.
I'm giving you 30 seconds.
But thank you so much. So I think for Budget 2025, one of the key things that we would request for the social entrepreneurship ecosystem is, number one, improving our market access through social procurement. So institutionalizing social procurement within corporations and also within the government. And that will be a great push for us to actually have more revenue coming in as well. And the second one is, of course, tax exemptions. Why? Because we need to encourage corporations, and we need to encourage more large foundations to actually invest in social enterprises. And the last and the final one is we need to build more social enterprises. And right now, today, as we speak, we are about 414 social enterprises, and we have set a target of 10,000 social enterprises. And in order for that to work, we need more public, private, and philanthropy partnerships, and more public-private partnerships.
Well said, Kuhan. Thank you so much. And Siti, a quick 30-seconder from you, perhaps, on Yayasan Hasanah. What would be the top of your budget wish list and hopes?
I want to make sure that support in terms of funding and also in terms of building and deepening the ecosystem continues. And this is very important because the work that we have been doing, although it has spent over a decade of intense effort, but we do need to take it to the next level.
That's right.
And this is where I'm calling forth for multi-year funding commitments to continue to catalyze and more public-private philanthropic partnerships out there. And this could be spurred through, obviously, more funding. More funding helps, and more longer-term funding. And also the awareness that funding community-based approaches, individuals that you build capacity, is something that is going to generate value over the long term, and funding needs to go to building resilient communities. And that is something that could be spurred through tax incentives to companies that spend money on strengthening, building resilient in different communities. And also in the case of Kuhan, whereby you're optimizing unutilized spaces.
That's right.
And
thank you.
More funding could go there too.
Fantastic. Thank you so very much for that really comprehensive and engaging discussion, Siti as well as Kuhan. Well, that's all we have time for today on NIAGA Spotlight's budget special. Looking ahead, of course, towards Budget 2025. We'll see you next week with more business analysis and insights. Here's to a productive week ahead.
Setinggi mana siling dan lantai ekonomi negara telah dinaikkan? Sejauh mana kualiti dan taraf hidup rakyat telah ditingkatkan? Bagaimana pendekatan seluruh negara jadi kekuatan merealisasikan visi ekonomi madani? Ikuti pembentangan dan kupasan komprehensif Belanjawan 2025 pada 18 Oktober ini hanya di saluran 501 dan di semua platform digital Astro AWANI.